Joining us now is Cynthia Dunbar. Cynthia is the Republican State Committeewoman representing the Republican Party of Virginia, and she is now an announced candidate for the House of Representatives U.S. Congress for the 6th District Republican seat of retiring current chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Bob Goodlatte, who says he'll be stepping down at the end of his term in December of 2018. Now, so far there are two announced candidates in this race for the Republican nomination: Cynthia Dunbar, who is joining us now, and a House of Delegates member from the area, from the Lynchburg area, also Ben Klein. Those are the two announced candidates. So we don't know if anybody else will get in, and we don't know what the nominating process will be, although based on the makeup of the Central Committee in the 6th District, we would expect that it would be a convention, a nominating convention, and probably sometime around May or so of 2018. But all that is up to the Central Committee. It could be a primary, it could be in April, it could be in June. We have no idea. That'll all play out. Joining us now, though, Cynthia Dunbar. Cynthia became the state committee woman of the Republican Party in Virginia by upsetting heavy favorite Suzanne Obenshain, the wife of State Senator Mark Obenshain, who ran for Attorney General and narrowly was defeated by Mark Herring in 2013. The convention was held in Harrisonburg. I believe that was May or so of 2000, or I think April of 2016. In Harrisonburg, the hometown of the Obenshains, and Suzanne Obenshain went into that a very heavy favorite to be elected state committee woman and got upset by Cynthia Dunbar, who ran a magnificent grassroots ground game in order to win that on the second ballot in Harrisonburg, April of 2016. Cynthia, good to have you with us.
Thanks, John. It's great to be here.
So, Cynthia, tell me a little bit about why you're running for Congress. So what is it that you want to do? Why do you want to be the nominee?
Well, actually, John, you just alluded to it when you said that it was a grassroots upset. Ever since I got elected, and I've been going around and speaking about what our president is talking about, drain the swamp, and you know what we have to do to change what's going on in Washington. What we're doing isn't working. Career politicians aren't working. I've had people come up to me up and down the valley begging me, please, please run. We need you to run. We need you to run to be our congressman. We need you to run to be our voice. And so I had finally committed to, this is something that I felt called to do, that I had to do to represent the people, because I truly believe that it's the people who are the power, not the elected elite. And so to give them the voice that they were asking for, I was willing to step up to the plate and do just that. And so my job is to go up and help the president get done what he's begging to do. I mean, we have the House, we have the Senate, we have the White House. Now's the time to do it, and we are utterly failing at it. And so we have this moment in time, and I just want to be a strong voice to go up and make sure that we do exactly that, drain the swamp.
When you say drain the swamp, what are you going to do, Cynthia, that's different from I mean, you know, I don't want to be cynical, but, you know, I talk to candidates all the time, and they come on my show and they say they're going to drain the swamp, they're going to make change, and they're going to fight for what's right, and then they get up there and they just become part of it. Yes, the biggest example I've got is my former congressman and former doctor, Tom Price, right? I was in Georgia for a long time. I voted and worked for Tom as a state representative, then a state senator. He was my doctor. I was his son's baseball coach back in the day. We elected him to Congress. I mean, he did a great job in the 6th District of Georgia, but then he just became part of everybody else. He got to be human secretary of HHS, and he's flying around in private jets, spending millions of dollars where he could have taken an $89 Amtrak ticket. How do I know you're going to be different?
Well, I think, and that's a great question,
Thank
I'm
you.
so glad you asked it, because that's the very reason why the people in the Shenandoah Valley have been begging me to run, is because they already know that I am different, because I'm not part of the elected elite. My background in that stands in stark contrast is I'm someone who is a fighter. That's what I am. That's what I do. I have no problem standing up to the powers that be. I don't just try to pat the elected officials on the back, try to go along, get along, and just keep those that are in power continue to promote those that are in power staying in power. And so I believe that a lot of the elected elite are not the solutions. They actually become the problems, just like you very clearly gave an example of. And so I'll just give you some examples. As soon as I got on the RNC, I started exposing internal corruptions and problems. And I started talking about things like why we couldn't go after voter fraud, that we had been operating for over 30 years under a consent decree where the RNC was actually having to report our annual activities to the DNC. And now that's going to hopefully lift in January of 2018. I also, my first resolution that I put forward was what I call my Drain the Swamp resolution. And it was a resolution in support of the Regulation Freedom Amendment. And to just put that in lay terminology, what that does is it takes legislative power away from the administrative state, from the bureaucracy, and puts it back in the hands of Congress. It allows just even a quarter of the House or Senate to flag any regulation that the bureaucratic state is trying to push down our throats and pass under cover of darkness, and flag it and tell the president we don't want this, and it doesn't see the light of day unless they actually pass it as a bill. And in order to get that through, now on the RNC, you have to get everything approved by the White House. And my first conversation I had was they asked me, they were like, well, this is actually substantive, to which my response was, well, of course it is. That's why I'm here on the RNC. I'm not here to wear a tiara and banner. But they saw the merit of it because they realized this is exactly what President Trump was pushing as far as he's done the best job of any president since Reagan of pulling back regulatory control. He used the Congressional Review Act over and over and over to pull these regulations away. But the problem is the second his administration ends, and hopefully that won't end for, until after 2 terms, but it can go away because it's not permanent. It doesn't make that regulatory reform permanent. The Regulation Freedom Amendment does. It locks it in. It permanently drains the swamp and puts the power back where it should be constitutionally in the hands of Congress. Those are the types of actions that I have done, that I will do, and I'll be able to do it even more effectively as the congressman from the 6th District.
So, Cynthia, you're a state committee woman. Obviously, in that role, you're involved in fundraising priorities, spending priorities, where they would go in Virginia. Now that you're running in a primary, is that a conflict of interest? And do you have to resign your status as a committee woman?
Absolutely not. I mean, basically, first of all, I think Congressman Radewagen on the RNC would take strong objection to that position because it's not a conflict of interest. There are several elected officials on the Republican National Committee, and because this is a grassroots effort, because I'm responding to a grassroots call, because this will most likely be a convention, I'm certainly not even going to be looking for nor asking for any kind of RNC monetary support. The way that I run any kind of election is going to be truly messaging to the people, and because the way I see it is it's not about me. It's about the people of the 6th District. It's about the people of the 6th District having their voice represented in Washington. It is not about the RNC or any of the elected elite already in place, handpicking who they want to go up into Washington and present the message that they're handpicking. So absolutely no conflict, and I made a commitment to represent the people on the RNC, and I intend to continue doing that.
Okay, so you're not going to step down, and you don't feel it's a conflict of interest. I get that. Is there any precedent set for what you're attempting to do?
Oh yes, I mean there have been congressmen on the RNC. Historically, there's lots of elected officials currently on the RNC. But as far as any precedent for what I'm attempting to do, what I'm attempting to do is respond to the call from the people. And we have seen over and over and over the American people be very disgusted with politics as usual. Just the dysfunction within the political system is rampant, and you were pushing Trump way before hardly anyone else. You saw the merit in his message and what he was saying as far as being able to just, really pull it back and start making some meaningful change. And I have been very frustrated. I actually did another resolution on the RNC that I got passed, which was a resolution calling on Congress to support our president, our platform, and our promises. We promised the American people several things. What we actually promised was repeal of Obamacare, and we can't even get that done. So there has to be those of us who will step up, not in any kind of, this has been, a vision or a mission of mine to be an elected official, but actually to just represent the people, get in, get it done, make sure the change is done while we have the opportunity, because I see this as the moment in time, and if we don't take advantage of it, we can lose it.
All right, well, that makes a lot of sense. Look, there's very trying times here. Just so everybody knows, Cynthia Dunbar and I were at odds for a long time. Cynthia was for Cruz, I was for Trump, and so we had our battles during the nominating process and at the convention. But Trump won, you lost, and so it's yesterday's news.
It's
right, Cynthia?
Yesterday's news, and then I began stumping for Trump, and have not stopped doing so since he got the nomination, because we really need to come together as a party, and we need to stop doing politics as usual. And so that is a good message, and we need to stay on message.
Cynthia, let's get to some of the issues. The tax reform package right now, it's going to get voted on in the House on Thursday. It is what it is. If you were there, would you be in favor of it? Why or why not?
Well, I have to say that, I wish it were stronger, very much so. What I would like to see is someone who was actually going to boldly come up and do some kind of package that's even going to present either a flat tax or a fair tax. I think a fair tax is maybe even better in the sense that it doesn't tax productivity. I think anything that we do that decreases our productivity is illogical and backwards. I personally think tax is a bad word. We have a lot of Republicans that are constantly talking about, we have to deal with tax reform, and I think that goes hand in hand with tax and spend, because as long as the government is still, is still spending, it's out of control spending, then we have a hard time actually getting any kind of meaningful tax reform through. And so, it's one of those things where, and even the battle for the Johnson Amendment to come out, I had a message from someone who was working on the inside, and they were just basically, frustrated that meaningful language, real meaningful language is in there. But of course, getting any kind of reform through is a positive. And so, we need to start at least ticking away at so much of the control and that we've seen with government in terms of big tax and spend mentality. And so I think that's definitely a start.
Well, you got to start somewhere. Look, you have to deal in the reality we have. So my question again is, if you were in Congress right now and you're on the floor on the Thursday, you only got two choices, right? Red or green. How would you vote?
Right, yeah. Well, you've got to stand up for the Republican tax reform and go ahead and vote to get it through. And then I would continue to be pushing, though, that's just a starting place, and we need to make it more and more meaningful for the American people.
Cynthia Dunbar, let's go to the Alabama situation. Although you're not involved in it, I just want to get your thoughts on it. It's been dominating the news cycle here for several days. You're also a female candidate, obviously. What do you make of that whole situation?
Well, John, the frustrating thing, and you'll agree with me on this, I believe, because, you're on the outside as far as media trying to combat the mainstream media and what they do with their toxic news and their fake news and over and over and over. And what's really, really frustrating is that the American people simply don't know what's going on. This is not like it's being tried in a court of law. It's not like there's been any kind of criminal allegations that have actually been making their way through the criminal process in a court of law. It's being tried in the court of public opinion, starting out through the Washington Post. Not like the Washington Post doesn't have a history of just making up whatever they want and spewing lies and toxic, things to try to build some kind of character assassination. And so the sad thing is this: if it's true, then yes, we feel very much for the victims. If it's not true, then this man is just absolutely being maligned and for political reasons in order to take him out and actually even steal away the rights of the people in Alabama to be able to choose who they obviously chose in the primary election. So I think the real problem in this is it shows that the fake news The lack of journalistic integrity has put the American people in a place where we just really don't even know what to believe anymore. And I just tend to never believe anything that the Washington Post puts out.
This is the John Fredericks Radio Network. We're with Cynthia Dunbar. She's a candidate for Congress, a Republican running in the 6th District seat of the retiring Bob Goodlatte. That'll be decided probably in a convention, right, Cynthia? That's the most likely scenario that I would say. I mean, they're hard to predict because the committee could do whatever they want, but if you look at the makeup, it's likely to be a convention scenario, probably April or May 2018, likely.
That would be likely.
Yeah, okay, so that's all likely. Other candidate in the race, House of Delegates member Ben Cline. Cynthia, Jeff Sessions is now evaluating whether or not to appoint a special prosecutor or attorney general on the Clinton Foundation, the Uranium One deal. But then the Democrats are saying, well, that's just a witch hunt because 9 heads of agencies backed the Uranium One deal. Jeff Sessions kind of backing off it yesterday, saying, well, maybe there's not enough evidence. What say you?
I say that one of the biggest problems in America right now is we are lacking liberty and justice for all. And I've talked a lot about the liberty in the sense of the freedom of Americans to come out from under the overly burdensome grip of government regulation, government taxation, all of that oppressiveness on their neck. But I also see the lawlessness. And when we have these types of issues where we have elected officials and the elected elite choose to turn a blind eye and not even go down the path of pursuing anything, I mean, there has been more than enough that has been brought forward. And I really, really hope that Jeff Sessions will move forward with at least pursuing the process to find. They have no problem pursuing the process to try to make allegations against President Trump and Russia. So I think we should, at minimum, go down that road and try to discover actually what transpired.
Look, I agree with that. I mean, we've got a special prosecutor, Robert Mueller, basically who's compromised on it because he was there when this happened. And secondly, he has no evidence of any Trump collusion or anything else. And that hasn't stopped him from being appointed to doing what he wants to do. If we really want to get to the truth of all this stuff, then it probably makes sense to me to look at the other side of it as well. So a lot of nonsense going on. Cynthia, I'm going to give you one more minute. Why should the Republicans in the 6th District vote for Cynthia Dunbar?
Well, the bottom line is this. Americans are tired of politics as usual. They're tired of the elected elite. And what we've found is that people going up and saying they're going to vote right, and many times actually even doing so, that's not changing our country. We no longer are in the day and age where just voting right or having good records is actually going to make any meaningful change. We have to have people who are willing to step into the fray and fight and fight and fight until they actually see movement. And that's what we've got to have. And that's just who I am. I mean, that's how I ended up winning as National Committeewoman to the RNC. I think my message resonates because people can see the sincerity in it. I'm not a politician. I don't have smooth political speech. But what I do have is passion for our constitutional republic. I know how it's supposed to function. I know that we should be implementing our checks and balances. And I know that we have a small window of time. And it is not time to play politics as usual. It is time to get in and help our president and get the meaningful change implemented so that we can save our nation.
Cynthia, what is your website?
Website is dunbarforcongress.com.
Dunbarforcongress.com. Cynthia, we're out of time. Thanks for being with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.